Salutations, friends. I'm Prince Amari, gay dating coach, matchmaker, #1 best-selling author of Lasting Love at Last, the gay guide to attracting the relationship of your dreams. And in this video, we're talking about measuring compatibility. So not just what makes someone compatible, how to tell if compatibility exists, but how to specifically rate compatibility. When you are getting to know someone, how do we quantify what that compatibility looks like and whether or not we're actually compatible? That's what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to share the exact process, the exact concepts that I teach all of my clients to use as they are navigating the dating process. And so let's hop in. First things first, when we think about compatibility, there are lots of different ways, lots of different considerations, lots of different models we can use for assessing compatibility. But the one I'm going to show you is the simplest, okay? And so this is going to take into account all the different factors, but really condense them into the one thing you need to be aware of in order to make really great compatibility decisions. Because when we think of this, like, we can talk about, are we compatible in terms of our values? Do we have similar lifestyles? Are our interests aligned? Do we want kids? Like, there's so many different factors and it can be overwhelming. So this is a really simple, but not ineffective, okay? Very simple, but very effective method for determining compatibility and having a quantifiable, is this gonna work? Is it working when you're getting to know somebody? All right, so there are 4 categories that we're looking at here. We have mental compatibility, emotional compatibility, physical compatibility, and material compatibility. And so first I'll tell you what each of those are, and then we'll talk about how do we rank each of those or rate each of those, and then the total score at the end. I got a little visual that I'm gonna show you so that this makes sense. But mental compatibility is where your values are, your relationship goals. Do we have similar intentions, right? Like, do we see the world through similar ways? Do we have similar perspectives, right? And the easiest way to think about this or quantify this is ease of conversation. That one thing is going to tell you whether or not all those other things are true or true enough to be sustainable for a healthy, happy relationship long term. Okay, so ease of conversation is the easiest way to measure all of those other different factors on a mental level. For emotional compatibility, right, this can include everything from, does a person have empathy, to do they know how to validate emotions, to do they have emotional regulation and intelligence skills, right? But the simplest measure here is emotional safety. How safe do you feel on an emotional level with this person? It's going to tell you all those other things with that one determinant, okay? The third is physical compatibility. So this is going to be your sexual attraction, right? Your physical interest, the passion, like all those different things. We can whittle that down to this one measure of comfortable touch, right? So you can think about this even in a non-sexual context. If we're just kissing or hugging or like physically touching each other in an open setting, like how comfortable is that touch, okay? And then finally, material compatibility. This is going to be lifestyle. This is going to be money. This is like all those different factors, but we can whittle that down to time availability, right? So if you have enough time together, if you can spend that time, it's a clear indicator that your lifestyles are relatively compatible at this base level, okay? And I want to make this disclaimer. We are talking about the simplest ways to give us a yes or no answer on whether we should continue getting to know someone, okay? So this is not the end all be all of compatibility, but if these essentials don't exist, then we know the rest just aren't gonna be there, all right? So those are the 4 categories. Now let's talk about how we rate and rank them, all right? So we have each of those 4. So we got mental compatibility, ease of conversation, emotional is emotional safety, physical is comfortable touch, and then material is time availability. Now, before I get into the rankings, I want to make something very clear, all right? Discussing compatibility is kind of pointless if you don't already have the skills or capacity to handle a relationship with someone who is compatible. So these same measures that we're going to determine whether or not someone else is a good fit for us, you can also use for yourself to quantify whether or not you are actually ready for a relationship or ready for the type of relationship you want right now, okay? So from that mental level, are you already a great conversationalist, right? Because if no, the ease of conversation in a relationship with someone else is going to struggle regardless of how well they might communicate, right? So your ability to do that is going to predict how well that's going to happen in your relationship. Same thing for emotional safety. If you're not a safe space for your own emotions, right, which is true for a lot of men, especially because we grow up in a world that teaches us to ignore our feelings, to minimize our emotions, to fear our emotions, right? So we don't really learn those emotional validation regulation skills that are required for all healthy relationships. And fun fact, out of all of these different categories, criteria, the emotional safety is primary for all healthy, happy romantic relationships. It's the emotional connection that trumps everything, even sex, right? The number one predictor of sexual satisfaction is the emotional connection you have with your partner. So if you're not already in a safe space for your own emotions, it's going to be hard to create emotional safety with a partner, all right? And then for physical touch, for comfortable touch, if you're not comfortable in your own body, touch is going to be awkward too. And then for time, if you don't got time for you, you don't have time for a relationship, right? So again, all of these can be used to assess yourself first before we start looking at whether or not we're compatible with someone else we might be getting to know. Now let's talk about the ratings. You can see that each of these has a scale of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, right? And ignore the rest. We'll get to the calculations, but a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are going to be equivalent to like the grade school ratings, where a 5 is going to be an A, 4 is a B, 3 is a C, 2 is a D, 1 is an F. So you can think about it that way for simplicity. Any relationship or any category that has a 1, this is going to be actively toxic, right? So that's what a 1 means. This is not just not good for me, it is dangerous for me. It is harming me. My presence in this relationship, in this connection with this person is taking away my life force. So that's what a 1 is, all right? A 2 is actively draining. So it might not be toxic in the I probably need to alert the authorities kind of way, but it's draining in a I'm not really getting any benefit. I'm losing, right? The more I'm here, the worse off I'm going to be. So that's what a 2 is. It's actively draining. 3 is going to be neutral, right? It's cost neutral. This is the average relationship, right? It's we can sustain this. I'm not losing out. I'm not necessarily having these really big gains either. Like it kind of evens out, right? It's neutral. It's a C, right? C's get degrees, as they say. So most relationships are going to fall in this category because most people have average relationship skills. Okay, so your skill level with dating and relationships directly correlates to how great that relationship is. Because the number one reason anybody is single is because they're trying to have a level 25 relationship with level 3 dating skills. Let's not pay that fact. You can actually find out your dating skill level by taking the dating skill quiz at the link in the description. That'll be there too. But that's a 3. It's a C. 4 is a B. It's above average, right? This is actively nourishing. This is I get a lot more out of this relationship than it costs me, right? And because this is above average, it means we are doing great, right? The issue that a lot of people have is that they're looking for the perfect relationship. They're looking for that 5, right? All A's in all the categories or nothing. And the problem is, if your skills aren't at a 5 in each of those categories, and neither of your partners, that's it's unrealistic, right? Because nobody is perfect, and so almost no relationship is going to be a 5 in every category. But fun fact, that's not required. Okay, so that's the A. That's perfection. Now, the other piece of this is all relationships are gonna take work to maintain, right? There's a level of effort. The type of effort is different based on the relationship and where things fall in those categories. If you have a 5 in terms of the mental connection with someone, you don't feel like you have to do a lot of work in nurturing that connection. It's more like we both are doing it. We already have habits that are able to sustain the mental connection, mental compatibility that we have. So it won't feel as though you have to do a lot of work to keep that up. But anywhere where the numbers are lower, especially like 3 or lower, it's going to take work to get more benefit out of that area in the relationship. And again, we often see this in gay relationships. The emotional connection is one of the biggest areas for the work because of how we're conditioned as men. All right. So for any relationship that you're in, And you can really start to determine compatibility here after you've gone on a date with someone. But I would recommend giving it 2 to 3 dates to really have enough data points to kind of start seeing a pattern, right? But you can totally do this in a first date. You really can't do this on a dating app. You don't know how emotionally safe you are, but sometimes you can tell if a person's emotional skills are toxic, just like if they're ignoring what you're saying, if they're not participating in the conversation. Like we can kind of see some of the elements of that on a dating app when we're conversing before date, but you can really start to see these things once you've had a conversation with someone, whether that's a video chat or in person on a physical date. So here's what it's going to look like. Say you're with someone and for ease of conversation, maybe it's a 4, right? It's better than average, great conversation. You don't feel drained by it, like you enjoy talking to the person, okay? For the emotional safety piece, maybe it's a 3, right? It's new, there's no disregard for your emotions or anything, but also it's not like necessarily the most emotionally cushy piece of connection you've ever experienced, but also it's new. So you can't really know that at the beginning because sometimes it does take a while for some people to open up emotionally, especially if they don't necessarily have those emotional skills yet, right? And then for physical touch, right? And this is not to be confused with the love language of physical touch, right? Doesn't matter what your love language is here. This is just about how comfortable you are touching the person. Again, I'll reiterate that. And let's say this was a 4, right? The hugs are great. You want more hugs. Maybe y'all kiss me like, oh yeah, I could definitely do this, right? So there's comfortable touch there, which is the surrogate for chemistry, right? And then for the time available, say it's a 3, right? Maybe we can only see each other once a week or whatever, but we're doing it, right? So if we then look at how we total these up for each of the numbers, you're just going to multiply it times 5. And so, pardon my writing in this direction. So 4 times 5, we got 20 here. And this total is going to be out of 100. So 3 times 5 is 15. We got another 20, and then another 15. And so all together, we have 70 out of 100. Now, going back to our grading scale example, this 70 would be a C. And remember, this is like the minimum requirement. You need at least a C for a relationship to be viable. So at least a 70 percentage, or 70%. The thing though is, where does potential fall into this conversation, right? So, yes, I mentioned all relationships take work, everybody's gonna grow, but your relationship is only gonna grow 5 to 15% over the course of its duration. And I have that here. So, 5 to 15%. And what that means is this 70 can potentially go up to 85 with the work that you put into a relationship. However, most people are not on a steep enough growth path to get that total 15%, right? Most people on average are going to grow about 5% or change about 5%, right? And so maybe this, realistically, this relationship, because both people are not on those steep growth paths, it's probably going to be a 75. But this is fine, right? Sustainable. We can do this. It's not a horrible relationship. So the issue is, if we are expecting an A relationship out the gate with no work, but we don't have A relationship skills, unrealistic expectation. The other thing is, we meet someone and we do this rating and it's a 40. We are not going to get an 80 out of a 40, right? That 40 is an F. We don't even need to worry about trying to invest anything in this particular relationship. This is very much get out as soon as possible, because the relationship is probably more toxic than even neutral for you. All right. So, this is the easy way to quantify in numbers what compatibility is giving by using the real criteria, science backed criteria that is going to help you determine whether or not you're a good fit for somebody or with somebody, and also whether or not you are ready for a relationship yourself. I want to say one thing about this timepiece. A lot of people will say they want consistency, right? Which is about time. The issue with that is everybody is consistent, but everybody's frequency of action doesn't look the way yours might look. And sometimes we haven't gotten to know people enough to know what their patterns are to then determine what is consistent for them. So you don't get consistency on day one, right? So you have to define what that means. Are you talking about consistent communication? So we talked for 3 days and you talked every day. It was consistent. Cool. But most people don't really have a good idea of what that means or what that looks like. Another piece of this is it's going to take you about 100 hours to really get to know someone's patterns. And this is spending quality time together, whether on the phone, deep text conversations, in person, right? Any of that. You need around 100 hours to really know someone's patterns. And it could be as little as 20 hours together, but 20 to 100, let's call that the range before you can make an informed decision about, you know, should we be together? Are we going to go? But if I only have 2 hours a week, right, it's going to take me a year to get to that 100 hours, right? So we all really need about 10 to 15 hours a week to date effectively. And if we don't have that much time available to date, it doesn't mean we can't get into a relationship. It's just likely going to take a lot longer to get to a place of commitment than we might like. Because if you have 10 to 15 hours a week, it's only going to take you maybe a month to 3 months to get to that 20 to 100 hour range before you know someone enough to understand their patterns, right? So if you don't have enough time for you, you don't have enough time to date, and then dating is going to feel like a chore. It's going to feel like too much. It's going to be hard to get the consistency you want because you don't have enough of the time available for that consistency to develop. So this happens a lot with especially gay men who are really ambitious and really busy and really driven. If you really want a relationship, you gotta move that time around, move your schedule around, and create that time. There's no way around it. Otherwise, the relationship is just gonna develop way too slow. And most people don't have the patience to only see you once a week for a year before they decide if y'all even go together. Okay, so that is uh, the rub on this. There are lots of other resources in the link in the description, so check those out if you want to dive deeper into all things relationships. If you want to schedule a consultation, the link is also in the description as well. But yeah, these are the 4 categories: mental, emotional, physical, and material for compatibility. And this is how you would rank those categories and determine whether or not someone's a good fit for you. So at least a 70. If it's not, might not be a great investment of your time getting to know that person. If you have questions, let me know. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have other systems for determining compatibility that you've come across. But this is the one that for the vast majority of my clients that have gotten into relationships that are really successful, this works really well for them. So yeah, that's all I got. See you next time. Sending you love, peace, and glitter. Adios.